we? Oh God, it's being recorded. We better stop what we're saying.
I haven't seen, there's quite a group.
Well, yes, some of the people you will and will not know, Jean. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You missed a good hike on Friday.
I know I did. I had my book group, so I had a real conflict there.
Okay.
But it looked like a fun day.
Book group or hike on the beach? Let me see. Which one do I want to do?
Well, I know, and I've been known to skip a few of the book groups, but we haven't met for a long time, so it's hard to miss that one too.
Okay.
You said you did 10 miles. I think the last time we went to Aptos, it was in the winter, and there were a lot of little rivers coming down off the hills down towards the water, and we even had a little trouble getting across on a few of them. Did you have any of that this time?
No,
No.
it's too dry. Jean.
Hang on.
Here we go.
No, it's great that I'm doing this. It's just amazing. Share screen too. There we go. I shared the wrong screen. You should now be seeing, I'm hoping, the Grand Canyon. Hang on, somebody wants in. Admit. Okay. Can you see the word Grand Canyon rafting?
Yes, Janice and Chris.
It came up, Barry, but
Hey,
you
Janice,
still got the sidebars.
Okay, sorry.
Back to gallery view.
Here we go. Are we on live now?
No.
Okay, God bless it. Why is Barry having this problem? Okay, let's do it one more time. Okay.
Hi, Janice.
Hello.
You might have to share again. There
There it is.
you go.
You're up.
There. Very business.
Okay, share from
You're
beginning.
up now.
Here we are.
Okay,
There you go. That's it, Barry.
thank you. It's as at a certain age, you start losing the sequence of things. Okay, so here we are back at the very beginning of the Grand Canyon tour. This is going to be the part 3. And just as a review, this is the Colorado River that goes through the Grand Canyon, and with all the Native American tribes that are part of the Grand Canyon. So it's a pretty amazing balance of people that we have across here.
Lost it, Barry.
Okay, lost it. God damn it. What am I doing here? Hang on. Share screen 2. Share. Share. I've got people coming in. That's
There you go. Now
Yeah.
you're back.
okay.
You're back now.
Okay, thank you. So we have all the different tribes. Again, this picture you've seen in presentation 1 and presentation 2, but at least it gives you again the feel of the Grand Canyon, because what you end up having here is something that is so hard to comprehend, and that is the sheer size. And it's again just from the very bottom, you can see the Colorado River on the left-hand side. Has what's called the Vishnu schist, which is the black rock that you've seen in a couple of presentations, which is the base rock of the whole Grand Canyon and generally the earth in general. And you can see the Zoroaster granite, which you've seen as the red granite. Just a little bit of a review of these different sections. We're now going to start day 14. And I thought one of the ways to start day 14 is for Donna to basically she has an original poem she wrote, which is an amazing poem. And you've all seen the sand that we had to endure with in the Grand Canyon each day. But I'm going to turn this over to Donna and let her read or let her interpret her poem. Donna, are you there?
I am. Thanks, Barry. So you've heard Barry talk about this incessant, and I'm not going to call it sand because it's not sand. I've camped in sand. I grew up in Southern California on the beach. This stuff is not sand. This is a special creation that is unique to the Grand Canyon. And it was, I won't speak for everybody else, but it was my nemesis. It was probably up until maybe day 12 or 14 until I finally just gave up and surrendered to the grit. But early on, about day 5, I just kind of had a meltdown over it. You know, not sleeping, this grit, the heat, all of that. You know, you expect a certain level of discomfort on any of these kind of backpacking, hiking, river rafting trips, but I wasn't prepared for the full level. So I wrote this and I read it on our final night. Now there's some expletives in this. I'm not going to say the expletives because I know some of your grandkids are going to be watching. So instead of the expletive, I'm just going to use the word bleeping, and you can fit in whatever expletive you want in there. So here we go. This is called Ode to Grit. Do not dare to call it sand. Sand conjures happy memories of childhood days at Huntington, Newport, and Seal. Sand is what you find on the shores of my beloved Point Reyes National Seashore and on the contrasting black sand beaches of Maui and Iceland. Ages and ages of floods, erosions, and eruptions have created an ever-present and omnipotent force of nature in the majestic Grand Canyon. Do not dare to call it sand. It's mother bleeping grit. It scratches your eyes, adds texture to your toothpaste, and cuts your skin. It finds its way into every meal and into your morning coffee along with your cream and sugar. It's everywhere you don't want it to be. You sweep it, brush it, shake it out, wipe it up. You rage and curse, and yet your efforts to control it or contain it make no impact. Our exceptionally skilled and very cute team leader, Corey, advised us to make peace with the sand. Peace, my bleep. There is no peace. There is only a grudging respect and the realization that resistance is futile. Do not dare to call it sand. It's mother bleeping grit. So there's the ode to grit. In a cleaned up version for you.
Donna, it's very apropos.
Thank you.
Very, very well done. I was amazed you were able to pull that together when you first came out with it. That's great. Well, here's the beginning of day 14 and Jim sitting in the grit, the bleeping grit. And so this would be a morning ritual where basically as we are packing ourselves back up again, he is sitting on his personal bag, which is the yellow bag we all remember, and trying to get the air out. And so but he actually, if you look at Jim right now, he looks very clean. His shoes look clean, so he must have dusted everything off right there. But that's the beginning of day 14. So
I think it was day 5 we had the windstorm on that beach. I think that's what triggered you, Donna, to
Yep.
because I remember I was not in a tent and the grit blew into my sleeping bag, but worse, when I was sleeping at nighttime, it blew into my mouth.
Yes.
And so I tried to drink some water and my mouth was full of dirt. And so I had to wash my mouth off and then drink.
Yep.
So then after that, I had to put a mask on, or I guess I put a buff over my mouth just to filter this stuff out because I was eating this stuff. You're inhaling this stuff. You're breathing this stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're probably right about that, Zane. So, yep.
I think that day 5 storm was the trigger.
Yeah. So I know it was before we got to Phantom Ranch because by the time we got to Phantom Ranch, I was seriously considering taking a mule out. So.
Anyway, here we are, day 14 on the beach. You can see all of us are all got our gears loaded and we're ready to go. And so it's just, again, one of these beautiful mornings you wake up and you just pinch yourself of where you are because it's just so spectacular. You're again on the river here. It's hard to put words into it, but it's so relaxing and so amazing. And after 14 days of this, you think this will go on forever. The views, again, you get the same views you've seen the last two presentations, but you don't get tired of them even after day 14. This is a little bit right now of the beginning of the first volcanic rocks, because you're going to see some volcanic action that has happened in the Grand Canyon. Okay, here is a picture I took off the internet. And this, I had never seen this before, and I thought it was a really good depiction. This is a volcano that I guess 73,000 years ago is what they say blew up, and lava or magma flowed over the tops of the Grand Canyon sections of it. And this area right here, you can see that where I've got the the pointer, that is called Vulcan's Throne. And right below Vulcan's Throne, and I couldn't find a good picture from the air, is what's called Lava Rock, or Lava Falls and Lava Rock, which you'll see some of our pictures. But this is kind of a quick overview of the magma that did flow across these mountains. So here, this is again back in the river, and you can see here where the magma or the volcanic action actually flowed like a icing over the top of cake, because you can see the original rock on the right hand side, and then you can see the volcanic magma on the left hand side. So these are just shots of the magma as we went down. I mean, it was just magnificent. I mean, it's another piece of the Grand Canyon that you never really see from the top. So here we are at the bottom. This was what's called Vulcan's Anvil. It's a volcanic remnant from the lava falls, and it's just sticking in the middle of the river. Like somebody had just thrown it down there, but you can see the backside of that mountain didn't have any lava on it, so it must have been a huge rock that fell down or tumbled down. So here we are. This is what is called Lava Falls. It's known as one of the more dangerous rapids in all of the Grand Canyon. This is what's called a Class 10 rapid. Doesn't look very ominous from this direction, but we all had to scout this, including the guides, to get a sense of where we were going to pass. So you can see this right now, again, doesn't look as ominous, except that it's a 38-foot drop. And I had no idea that it was that big of a drop, but it's, so the water of the Grand Canyon or the Colorado River drops quite a bit here. At the, again, because it is a Class 10 rapid, in the Class 10, the 1 through 10 rating is something the Grand Canyon does, because most rivers are not rated that way. They're rated 1 through 5, but the Grand Canyon is one of the few that's rated 1 through 10. In most places, this would be considered Class 5, or the worst of the worst. And again, this is from high up looking down at these rapids. They don't look that bad. At the end of the presentation, you'll see a video of people going through this. As we're going down lava rocks, which we did survive, you see more of this volcanic rock, and again, left over from the volcanic era. Just another beautiful afternoon. Another beautiful afternoon with just absolutely spectacular scenery. We're now into day 15. We all realize it's coming closer to the end. Here is a morning shot of the boys doing their morning duties because you're not looking for wet ankles here. You're looking for relief. So I caught this picture of, of the boys doing what they're supposed to do. So typical mornings on the river, Corey, our leader, would read us a poem. And it was always just a great way to start the day. And after 15 days of this, it was just spectacular. But you notice Corey's skirt, it is his morning attire and his evening attire. So as we continued on that day, you see more of this magnificent geology. I mean, it goes in every direction. You don't tire of it at all. One of the things you realize, and you see a little bit more of it here, there is a green bush here called the tamarisk. And I mentioned this a little while back, but it's kind of a weed that has formed in the Grand Canyon. And it was first introduced in the 1800s, not to the Grand Canyon, but to, I guess, Arizona. In the 1930s, when they installed the Glen Canyon Dam, the tamarisk continued growing down in the Grand Canyon. It is now turning into a pretty much of an invasive bush. And so they're trying to eradicate it. Anybody have any thoughts, Jim, on the tamarisk, or Donna?
No, it's just taking over the floor of the canyon.
Yeah, there were several evenings where Ryan, one of our guides, would just with a little shovel just go around and just dig it up. So
They've
They introduced something to kill the tamarisk.
Yeah.
Was that a beetle or something like that?
yeah,
And
introduced.
you can see some of the dead. Yeah, see some of the dead branches there in your picture.
Yep.
Yeah, they introduced a foreign beetle that eats the tamarisk, but I don't know. They don't know if it's going to kill it off or not. It seemed to be killing some of the bushes off, but I also saw bushes that looked dead that were coming back to life. So I'm
From
not sure it's working.
from a distance, it looks like a great bush, but it seems to be hurting all of the native plants. So
Well,
again,
it displaces the native willows is what it does.
yes, thank you.
I just wanted to the three ladies on the trip are all present on the call. There were 20 men and 3 ladies, and we're all here. So yay us.
Good, Donna. Again, here is a great shot. The Colorado River is green. It's not this dirty brown that it's always depicted to be, but you see a little bit of the volcanic action over the top of the rocks. But it totally it covered the area. Here again, you'll see the black volcanic action, and then you see all the other layers of the Grand Canyon. This area was just heavily volcanic accented. It just traces of magma all the way along most of the rocks. Beautiful shots. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is just, I mean, it's so dramatic, different than anything else. So you see the tamarisk, you see the beautiful magma formations. So here's another shot. We're getting a little bit out of the magma area or the volcanic area. Here is rolling his own boat. Somebody's got a microphone I can hear in the background, or a lot of scratching. Anyway, it was a beautiful day. On the river again. Very relaxing day. You can see
This is one of our newer guides, isn't it, Barry?
Who's rowing there? I'm trying to think.
It's Casey.
That was Casey.
It was, okay. I couldn't tell.
One of the guests on one of the 16 guests. The guides were kind enough to hand over the oars to anybody that wanted to try and row one of the boats. So that last photo was Casey giving it a go.
Driver's education.
Right. I mean, you could see the absolute splendor and spectacular scenery. But again, most of the bushes along the edge of the river are that tamarisk or the weed that they're trying to get rid of. So, from a lay standpoint, it doesn't look bad, but from another perspective, it is a very bad thing. More shots of what you see there as volcanic rock left over. But one of the things that you see at the bottom of this picture is what is called a pumpkin spring. And it was a very interesting thing. It almost looks inviting, except that what you end up having is it contains the most poisonous water on the Colorado River, and it is high levels of arsenic that is basically, I guess, coming out of the ground or leaching out of the rocks. But it makes this beautiful pumpkin-like figure. This is the top of Pumpkin Rock, and you can see the water. It was a warm water, but it's not a place that you want to take a bath in. It's heavily has a lot of arsenic in it. But from a view, it was a beautiful view. We ended up camping or spending the night right near there. You'll see that in a few minutes. Again, one of our camping spots for the evening. You can see how close to the volcanic rock we were, finding a little bit of sand that we could all find our home in, because that becomes home for the evening. So at this site, this is the view as the evening sun is going down. You can see the glow up in the hill, and you can see the Colorado River below, and all of us is scampered around to find a place to be able to call our home for the evening. Here's Casey standing at the edge of the rock, and just another great picture of the river. This combination of sand and rock and water and beauty. It's just hard to put words to. This picture here is the picture I use as my background today, but it was the top here. It was where Jim and Kevin and Mark and I spent the evening, but it was our camping area. We found a little bit of sand to spend the night there. So our evening, this was an evening sit around. We'd sit and we would either tell stories. But this evening, what we were preparing for was our gambling evening. we had a game called Mexican Viejo, which was a dice game, and Eric, the guy in the pink shirt, was the instigator of this. But after a few beers, it became just an absolutely fun game to play. So here's Kevin getting half dressed. He can't quite figure out what he should do, get in, get out, or what. It's just a great picture of a happy camper, as they say. Another shot of what is called our groover area. I tried to take a bunch of pictures of this as we went along, see different. But again, the groover being the toilet, and you had the orange bucket. Any other interpretation that I'm missing, Jim or Donna? Or
you should explain why it's called a groover.
I did last time, Zane, and
oh, did you? Okay.
I'd refer you to part 2.
Okay.
I can go through it again.
No, okay. I think I missed part 2. I was traveling that day.
No problem. So here we are into day 16 now. So day 16, again, we are back on the river early in the morning. You can see Matt and Casey standing there, and we have the Blue Crusher, which was Casey's mascot that he carried most of the time. So that morning, Mark decided that he would put on 2 life vests, and he would put on one as almost a diaper. But the point of this was that Eric, who was one of our guides, was very insistent that all of our buckles were always buckled up. And so Mark and I and Jim and Kevin were always being not scolded, but, you know, close that buckle, close that buckle. So Mark that morning decided to show Eric that he could close all the buckles on everything. So he put 2 of them on. Anyway, it's just a fun picture. So here's Corey, our guide, our head man, and this was one of the rocks, actually a Vishnu schist, I think it was, but it had a giant hole in it, and he was trying to climb into it. Back on the river again, you can see the beautiful, beautiful views. There's Ryan and Patty, Ryan being one of our guides. Again, just, you know, it becomes normal after 16 days to see these views, but it's just spectacular. Just continued on. So middle of this day, they showed us we needed to go for a hike, which we did every day. This was one of my favorite plants. This is called the Ocotillo cactus, and it only blooms in the springtime, in March, April timeframe. And because we were there in April, a lot of it was still blooming. But it's this very hostile cactus that has this beautiful flower at the end of it. And you can see on the right-hand side how hostile that plant is, those prickles. I mean, you get near it, it'll just eat you alive. But the edge of it is just, I mean, it's just magnificent. Another cactus, this one was called the buckhorn cholla cactus, and it was blooming also because it was just at the edge of the time frame when there was a lot of wetness that had just passed, but beautiful cactus. Back on the river, but now because it's pretty flat, they're letting us, the guests, row. So here we have Kevin. You'll see a couple more videos later on of him rowing, but he's trying to feather the rowing and at the same time make forward momentum. But you can see Eric on the upper right-hand side kind of going, really? Okay, Kevin, you need to go forward, not around the circle. So anyway, any other thoughts, Jim?
No, that pretty well just describes it.
Okay. There's Jim and Kevin on the back. You can see there's just this glee on their face, and our guide, just a beautiful day on the river. It's hard to describe. So we again pulled over on one of these afternoon stop hikes because they were every day we would hike somewhere. So here what we did was what they were showing us. This picture, we're looking for a rock because at one time, and I'm talking about one time 30 years ago, the river was as high as where these 3 guys are standing here. And what we're looking for is a rock that in 1983, July 1st of 1983, was the high water of the Colorado River due to obviously rains, because we had had an El Nino winter, and the numbers that they carved into this rock, you can see, was 97,000 cubic feet a second. So it's hard to relate to that, except that when we were doing it, we were 8,000 to 10,000 cubic feet a second, meaning that's how the water flow was. So I'm going to go back real quick. This picture is in the distance. You can see there's a little bit of a high mark, and then it goes down. The river is below that, right down here. So you can imagine how much water had to flow down the Colorado River at one time to be able to have Jackson and Casey, it looks like Jeff, for us to be where the river edge was. I mean, it's again one of those interesting pictures for perspective. Any comments, guys?
If you look across the other side of the river on that last picture, it's hard to believe that the water would have been right up on the other side. It just gives you an unbelievable eeriness to be where we were on the boats, thinking that there were 97,000 cubic feet per second roaring over us.
Yeah, this
Wow.
would have been a puddle almost where we were compared to and the funny thing is this is 1983. I mean, most of us are old enough, we all understand that wasn't that long ago. Anyway,
Were they able to go rafting in that type of river flow, or was it too dangerous?
They rafted. Matter of fact, you've heard us refer to the Emerald Mile, and the Emerald Mile is the name of a dory that set the speed record from Lee's Ferry all the way down to Pierce Ferry, where we took out. That's the same stretch of water that we were on. And they rafted, pardon me, they didn't raft, they were in a dory, and they did it in less than 38 hours. So
Wow.
yes, and there were a lot of people on the river at that same time. And the Park Service closed the river for some of the rafters and shut it down for a number of hours.
It was a very
Wow.
dangerous situation on whitewater Cataract Canyon, north of Glen Canyon in '82.
did you
And,
see that flow?
The El Nino was already in effect, but not maximum. We were at 30,000. They said 30,000 cubic feet per second at Cataract Canyon. It was very dangerous. I can attest to that.
Anyway, it's just interesting. So here we are, the same basic spot on the river, and so we're eating lunch. And if you'll notice, one of the things that they're really insistent on is they always made this wonderful lunch.
Barry,
Yes,
Barry, excuse me. Just to help put this into perspective, there's approximately 7.5 gallons of water in 1 cubic foot. So if people want to get their calculators out and do a little math, it'll really give you a perspective.
Wow. Yeah.
Glenn, thank you. So here we are in the river, and this day we had about 7,000 or 8,000 cubic feet a second. You can see the river. It looks pretty benign, but you can imagine 10 times that amount of water. It's staggering. But anyway, the point of this picture is that when we did have these wonderful lunches, that we would always have to be standing by the water because nothing could really fall onto the sand, or as the ode to grit would say, the MF sand. Because what you were doing then, again, I think I mentioned this last time, what you would be doing is feeding the ants and the critters, and this is what they didn't want. So dropping some food into the water was not a big deal. So back on the river again, we're starting to flow south again. It's a little more benign. And so what do boys do? They start to have fun. So the guides start to bring out some of the water toys and anyway, it was one of those things that we started having water fights because it's warm in the afternoon and the probably high 90s, mid 90s, and anyway, buckets came out, and so it was just a great way to cool off. So as we start to go down the river, we come across, if you notice in the background there, a mountain there that looks like an oriental hat or something, but it's called Diamond Peak. And Diamond Peak is 225 miles south of Lee's Ferry, where we started. And the height, they explained to us, from where we entered at Lee's Ferry to the top of Diamond Peak that you see there in the background, that's how much elevation that we have lost going down the Colorado River. So every time we go through a rapid, it would be, I don't know, 10 feet, 6 feet, lava falls was 30 plus feet, but in a cumulative 225 miles, we lost that kind of elevation. Any thoughts, Jim or Zane, or chime in?
That says it all. That realize that that's the amount of gradient that we had, and we're now almost at the end of the trip.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Has anybody, can you hear me at all? I
Yep.
guess
Go
not.
ahead, Eric. Yep.
yeah.
Has anybody hiked that thing? Has anybody hiked to the top of it?
Well,
Have no idea, Harry.
I'm just curious.
Someone asked that question to Corey, and he wasn't sure. He thought someone had tried it. He wasn't sure if they made it or not.
well, the biggest problem would be is getting there to start out with, and then did you bring enough water? And then the second thing is, this thing is nothing but a shade. It's rocky. It's I'm sure somebody's hiked it, but it wouldn't be an easy hike, I'll tell you.
Was it Diamond Peak that had a put out the cars could drive down to?
Yes, that is one of the pull-out. There are two pull-out points on the river. One of them is Diamond Creek, that's on the left side, and the other one is where we pulled out about another 50 to 60 miles down the river, called Pierce Ferry.
So Diamond Peak, what you see there is a 2,200 foot elevation above the river. So we dropped 2,200 feet. So it's pretty amazing. So here's a little side story I put in here. At Diamond Peak in 1928, Glenn and Bessie Hyde wanted to become the first woman to go down the Grand Canyon. So on their honeymoon, they got married, and they ended up building this boat. And they built this boat in 2 days, and it cost them $50. So Glenn, you can see, it was an adventuresome person, except that it killed both of them. So, at Diamond Peak, where we just were in one of the rapids, they don't know how or what, but both of these two people, Glenn and Bessie, there's the couple, ended up dying. And they found the boat later on, this wonderful, magnificent boat that he built for $50. And one of the things I read was that he put no life jackets aboard. And before he went on the trip, he didn't think that life jackets were necessary, because somebody said, well, aren't you getting a life jacket? No, it cleanses. And I go, okay, well, it cost them their lives, but they did find the boat later on.
It was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
They never found their bodies, by the way. So there's a lot of interesting stories about this, and this is only one of the stories of these two. So as we continued on, again, I keep saying the same thing, but the scenery is just, it just keeps going. So they decided another side trip, because every day you got to have a side trip. So this side trip, you can see we're all pulled in here up against these rocks, have no idea what's in store for us. But they said, okay, you can see in the background, you can see the Colorado River, and we're now hiking up these rocks. The good part is along these rocks, because old men don't climb rocks real well, but ropes do help. And so here we are climbing up this rock face, and the Indians, the local tribes, have built these rope ladders for people to climb, because they don't want to helicopter every other tourist out of here who has climbed these rocks and slipped and fallen. But you can see how spectacular this is with the water. Where we end up is, you can see Matt there. and Jeff, and looks like Eric at the top, our guy trying to help us. So when Eric gets off, he doesn't fall backwards. But it's just this beautiful cavern that we're looking for. They had told us about, and here's the cavern. It's again on the side of the river. It's the most beautiful place to take a bath or just to stop in. But you've got this water that's rushing down the side of the hill here, and so all of us ended up. You can see Zane there, and Kevin and Matt and Jeff in the background in orange, and it looks like Donna's right there, right next to him. Right. But anyway, it's just a great place to cool off and to stand in that water. And but it's still, from what I understand, a spiritual place for the local tribes.
Water was very warm.
Exactly, Zane, because I think because it was not rushing, it was flowing over the rocks.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how cold the Colorado is. It's pretty chilly water that we're rafting in.
Yeah.
So having some warm water is quite nice.
Exactly, it's thermal water. So here's the top of that falls. Looking up, you could see the water going across the rocks, and the sun heats the rocks, and then obviously the rocks heat the water. And by the time we get into the shower down below, like Zane said, it's warm water. So, but it is still an area that is considered holy by one of the tribes, and they don't allow a lot of people to go up there. And but anyway, that we were able to get there, which I appreciated. So we're now walking back down to the river edge again. You can see Donna's lovely grit there. It's tough to walk in, and but by the 14th, 15th, 16th day, you've made peace with some of it at least. Some of the rock formations down at the bottom, you can see years of when it was 80, maybe 100,000 cubic feet a second, where it would be flowing up against the rocks, and it's made everything smooth. And one thing that maybe I didn't mention last time, the Colorado before the Glen Canyon had a lot of silt in it. So as there's years and thousands of years of this water running past these rocks, it is heavily laden in silt, which is really nothing more than sandpaper. And so that's why so many of these rocks are so worn so quickly, because of the silt. Anything to say by anybody? No. Okay. Here we go on. This is another small waterfall, and it was not, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a little bit of water that was running over the edge. And I guess in the wintertime, there's quite a bit more. There's just a pretty rock formation with water running across it. And here I added a couple of pictures of an area that we were not able to go to. And this actually goes back, should have been in the second presentation, but this is called Havasu Falls. And it's on the Havasupai Indian Reservation. And this is in the Grand Canyon. And what you have here is on a tribal reservation, and the tribes close this area to rafters or to us non-Indigenous people because they were afraid of COVID. Because you didn't want to bring COVID to one of the tribes or through one of the groups there. But I found these pictures, and it was something we missed, but just as an informational thing. This is called Havasu Falls. This one here is in the same area of Havasu Falls. This one's called Mooney Falls. And again, we missed this one, but you can see that blue, spectacular blue water. This was part of Mooney Falls, and this is called Travertine Terrace. Again, because of COVID, we were not able to get back here. So here we are back on our trip, and we're back on the water again. But here it looks like we're pulling in here to look for an evening spot. And so as we pull in, you can see the evening glow starting to go down, a little bit of the sand. The evening is now being set up, dinner is set up. You can see the crews got their hand washing station, the red and the green buckets. The white container there is for our drinking water, because that was always available to us and encouraged to drink. But this is where we'd have dinner. I mean, you know, the view is spectacular. Here's Jackson and Corey making, I can't remember what they were making that evening, but you can see they're having, they did magnificent things for us. This was an interesting picture. This is Casey, who brought a Garmin device with him. The only way he could communicate, but he was wanting to communicate with his wife, Barbara, back in, I think it was Wisconsin or Iowa, I can't remember. But he was able to text her. So you can see he's solar charging his phone, and he's got his little solar charger up at the top also, but he's trying to communicate or text out to his wife. This is the evening spot. You can see on the left-hand side, the Vishnu schist, the black rock, the sand, and then the river is right next to it. But this is the quad area. You can see Jim there blowing up his Thermarest sleeping bag, which didn't require a whole lot of blowing up. But here I am trying to fix my shoes, because this is now the 16th or 17th day, and my bedding is right here on your forefront, and you can see the 4 rocks and see everything set up the way we'd normally set it up. But what had happened was my shoes had ripped so badly because the rocks had eaten them up, that Mark had some duct tape along, that I started to duct tape my shoes together to be able to survive the last couple of days, but ended up throwing them away. But this is what kept us going. That evening, this is the evening get together. The chairs are out. Mark's washing his hands, ready for dinner because he's getting hungry. And there you can see everybody sitting around. There's Jeff, and looks like Donna probably on her other side, journaling, making notes of what they should be telling everybody when they get home, because probably nobody will ever actually read the journal, but at least you've got some information. And there's the group in the background sitting there, and what are they doing? Gambling. Mission, anyway, playing the dice game. But this would have been our evening. You can see the river going by, quiet, wonderful evening, warm evening, the sun going down. You know, it's hard to beat this. There's the group, or a couple of the groups sitting around. There's Matt relieving himself into the river. Wouldn't want to do it anywhere else, but directly into the river. And you can see the boats are tied on. A little bit of the Vishnu schist, which is that black rock poking out there, which is that very tough base rock that the whole Grand Canyon is built on. So day 17, we're ready to go. Now this is, a picture was taken because of Kevin, who was in the Marine Corps. And he told us that there was a way of standing. If you were a second lieutenant and you had some new guys that you were trying to tell things to, this was the stance. And the stance was, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I sure look like I know what I'm doing. So we all took the second lieutenant stance, because like we all knew what we were doing, but we didn't. Any comments, Jim?
I didn't know what that was all about. Thank you for cluing me in.
Oh, you didn't? That was Kevin's second lieutenant. He said he would stand high on the hill sometimes with these new recruits, and he'd have this look, these hands on his sides overlooking the group. And he says, they all thought I knew what I was doing. And he said, I thought, what the hell am I doing? Anyway, that was just a fun thing. So here we go down the river again. We come to another place. They tell us we must stop. Okay, so we pull over. So we now hike. We hike. You can see where their boats are down there up the side of this hill. And we're all going, okay, what are we going to go see here? We could see there was no water or anything around. But what we were looking for was a plaque that had been placed here. And what the plaque is that in this spot that I mentioned, there were 3 guys who came down with John Wesley Powell, which was one of the early explorers coming down. But 3 guys, William Dunn, who was 24 years old, and 2 of his compadres, who decided that they did not want to continue on the Colorado River. They were going to hike out. Well, they left, but they were never seen again. And so after their hike out, this was a plaque that was put there as a keepsake for them. One of the thoughts was that they were, as the plaque says, that they were killed by the local Shiwit Indians because they allegedly, the men were blamed for the death of a squaw. And that was one story. The other story was that they was killed by a Mormon group who were threatened by the federal government, thought these guys were spies. So, nobody really knows, but all 3 of the guys decided to hike out, but they were never seen again. So
I think they were starving a little bit on the river too. That's another reason they wanted to leave. And Powell wanted to continue.
Right, exactly, Zane. But the difference was that Powell 2 days later made it out of the Grand Canyon and they didn't. So anyway, it was unfortunate, but there's nobody knows what actually happened. So these are all hypothetical stories. This picture is right there at that spot where they would have turned around and gone out. And what this spot also turned out to be, you'll see it in a few minutes on some of the video. We ended up going through this with our life vest. So the guides allowed us to put our life vests on. So we were able to run this rapid, just floating through it. And this picture is the 3 of us, obviously myself, Kevin, and Mark, after they've drug us out of the river. But you'll see a video of us going through that later. So as we continue down here, they've pulled us out, we've warmed up again, and another beautiful, spectacular picture, spectacular pictures. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this geography.
Layer upon layer.
So here we are coming down to one of our last days, and this was the crew. We all got some beers, we took the chairs, and we planted ourselves into the river to be cooled down. And so here we are reminiscing, which is the last couple of days on the river. Of an amazing river trip that we've had. But you can see there's not a person that's upset. There's no politics. There's nothing other than very happy people who are just reminiscing.
So some days were really hot. Some days were really cold. This was a very hot day. That's why we're in the river.
So what we were waiting for is we're in the river, we're waiting for our transport. This was a jet boat that came from Pierce Ferry that came up to see us, to pick us up. And the first day, the 17th day, they arrived. I didn't know exactly why they were arriving, but they arrived to bring us our evening meal. So they brought, wasn't it salmon that night? I'm trying to remember, Jim.
Yeah.
Salmon and ice cream.
Yep, salmon and wild rice. It was the first meal that we had. So the first meal and the last meal were the same.
Right. So, the guy comes up in his jet boat, and what's he bringing? A great meal for us after 17 days. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. The other thing that he was bringing, you'll understand this in the next couple of pictures, was an outboard motor. Because when we got aboard this jet boat, you'll see later on a couple of the videos, we're going relatively fast, but the guys who have to take these rowboats back, they needed to be able to get back also. So anyway, this is the jet boat unloading. And so he's taking some of the gear off. He drives his boat obviously right up on the shore. It's not a problem. It's a steel boat, and it's Donna's grit that he's driving up into. So here are the boats that evening where our guides are putting everything back aboard, and they've lashed the 6 boats together. And I mentioned that they brought an outboard motor because on the back of this, they put an outboard motor, and that motor was designed so they wouldn't have to row these 6 boats out of the canyon. They were into Lake Mead. Anyway, you'll see more pictures of them later on. This was one of our
It's
last.
about 25 miles.
Thank you, Jim. It's a long distance. I mean, you wouldn't want to row 25 miles, no matter who you are. So the little outboard motor that they brought helped a lot. This was one of our last evenings. You can see Zane there sitting, writing the last few notes or something he was doing for the song that he wrote, which we're going to play in a few minutes, but it's also Jamie singing. And so it was just one of our last evenings together, and it was just a glorious evening. There's the other part of the group. You can see the ammo can sitting there because Eric wanted to probably play a little more mission, a little more liar's dice or a little dice game, but never did do it that evening. Had too much other activities going on. So this was one of our last evenings. The sun's going down, and it's just a spectacular view that we have. So here we are into day 18, our last day. Our boat here had taken off that evening, and he came back the next morning. So here he is coming in. And what we've done, if you notice, the front of that jet boat is now fully loaded with all of our bags. You can see the green bags, the blue bags, the yellow bags, everything is loaded except for the paying customers who now need to go aboard. So we all jump aboard, and the boat starts to go down the rest of the Colorado, which now connects onto Lake Mead. And this was a little bit of a surprise to me. The majority of this river continuing on is very, very shallow, and the jet boat had to continuously maneuver around the low water or the sand that would be popping up. But the views as you're jetting through the Grand Canyon on the Colorado are just as spectacular in every direction. But right now we're out of the Grand Canyon National Park, and we're right now into the Lake Mead recreational area. Anyway, just some great shots as the jet boat is taking us out of the canyon, which is just as beautiful as when we were actually in a raft. One of the things you start to see in the next few pictures is the level of the banks. If you notice on the side banks there, you can start to see how low the Colorado River, how low Lake Mead is, and how low the water level is in Lake Mead, because those banks don't look very tall, but they said they're 60, 70 feet high, that the river, or Lake Mead is down that far. This is one of my favorite pictures of our head person. His name was Corey, like I've told you many times. And it was just, you could see how much he enjoys it, even though that he's done this 58 times or 59 times. He's not, it's like his first time. Anyway, it's just a great picture. Again, there is
He
a
just
great.
finished number 6.
Say again, Donna.
He just finished number 60 in Dory's.
Wow.
Yeah.
60 trips.
Yeah, and the first one, he was 11 years old. Here you can see the Grand Canyon. You can see a little bit of the perspective. That's not the top of the Grand Canyon, but you can see the level of water, the banks, how much Lake Mead is receded in the water. The farther we go into Lake Mead, it gets to be actually uglier in the sense of how desperate the water situation is. These banks, this is a better depiction of the banks, of how much water has left Lake Mead. I mean, how even the Colorado is not replenishing it as fast as we're using it, as fast as it's being used for hydroelectric and different things. Anyway, so about, I don't know, 20 miles into our trip out the Grand Canyon on the jet boat, we come across our crew. This is our group of people who have left. I think they left 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with their 20-horse outboard, pushing our 6 boats the same distance we're now going on jets, on a jet boat on. But we came up to them and we kind of circled them a little bit and said hello and thank you, and all the gratuities we could possibly tell them thank you for an amazing trip. But they had to take the 6 boats and, like I said, early in the morning, put them all together, and then they put that 20-horse outboard on the backside and they drive it all the way to the same place we're going to. After we left them, one of the things that I was able to see, and other people have seen it, and from the Grand Canyon low down, you look up and you see what is called the Grand Canyon Skywalk. And it's a horseshoe-shaped cantilever bridge, which is a glass walkway that comes out 70 feet and is 4,000 feet above the Grand Canyon. And it was built by the Hulapi Indian tribe a couple of years ago. And the idea here is money. They want to be able to have people experience the Grand Canyon or see it. But anyway, they built this structure. And I took this off the internet, but here's what it looks like from up top. So if you want to spend some money and walk out on a platform that overlooks the Grand Canyon, because it's glass that you're walking on, so you look 4,000 feet straight down, that's what you end up seeing when you're out there.
Yeah,
It's
the guides refer to the toilet seat.
Go ahead, say again.
I said the guides referred to it as the toilet seat.
Exactly. I didn't want to say that. That's exactly, or the groover seat. Exactly. It
There's one of those in near the Columbia ice fields up near Jasper in Alberta. I went on it last summer. I went out on it. It's the same thing. It's like 4,000 feet high and a big glass bottomed horseshoe. It was spectacular.
Yeah, as long as you don't have fear of heights, you got no problems, right?
The girl I was with had fear of heights, and I was very proud of her. She definitely went out on it, but she didn't let go of the railing. But she was still walking on a glass floor, so I was very proud of her. I have no fear, so it's good.
Good, Wendy. So here we are. We're continuing into Lake Mead. You can start to see the Grand Canyon's receding and the lake is starting to open up. But again, you see these banks that are just huge, high banks of how much the river has receded. And we're getting further and further into Lake Mead, and it's shallower, and the guy in the boat is continuously going right and left to try to miss sandbanks in the middle of the river. This is just a quick overview. You can see on the right-hand side the word Pierce Ferry. Pierce Ferry, if you see that, right next to the Colorado River, is where they took us out. The rest of the river and Lake Mead all the way down to Las Vegas, because you can see Las Vegas on the left-hand side there. That's how much water, when the banks are down 70, 60 and 70 feet. I mean, it's staggering to think about how much water that is. But they took us out at Pierce Ferry, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. So this was the ramp where they took us out, this was Pierce Ferry, where most of the boats, all the river companies were able to get their trucks down to. And you can see we're coming in loaded up with all of our bags, and we know this is now the end of the trip. And so, any comments, guys?
You're right on with the launch ramp. The interesting thing here is those other boats have already de-rigged their boats, and they're waiting to get the equipment down on the fair or down on the ramp that's going to take all that stuff out of there. And our guys came down with one trailer, and you'll see something on my presentation next week, which is a different perspective from the rim, showing what our guides did with the launching of the rafts and also the dories. That Donna had mentioned, Corey has just gotten back. I was at the beginning, the night before Corey's trip up at Lee's Ferry, and got a pretty good picture of how this all works and how Oars does it, that you'll see next week.
Okay, so here we are, unfortunately, the end. So I'm gonna show you a couple of videos, and a couple of videos. One is Zane ended up writing a really interesting song, and let me set this thing up first before I do this. Let me click off of here. Okay, click off of here and kill this. So Zane wrote a well, let me Zane, why don't you just start with it, and I will hold it and you give some background on this. Hang on, God damn it, stop. Okay, I'm gonna let you give some context to what we're gonna be watching now.
Okay. Well, Corey had this idea that for good luck people, all the men should paint their toenails these wild colors. And I wasn't too interested in getting girly with my painted toenails or having to explain it to my wife. So as the days progressed, one by one, the men caved in to getting their toenails painted until I was the last holdout. And being true to my colors, I refused, and I wasn't going to give in and submit to peer pressure. So the next day, I was on Corey's boat, and it was a very calm, peaceful day. And so I just laid back on the raft, put my feet in the air, took my shoes off, and took a little nap. And Corey decorated some of my toes that afternoon. And to be honest, when he was very nervous whether he was going to get a tip from me at the end of the trip. But I'm a good sport. Anyway, so another part of this trip was the hematite. I'm not sure if you covered the hematite. Barry, did you talk about that?
No.
Okay, so the indigenous, the natives of this area, they would do these pictographs up in some of the canyons, and they would use this reddish kind of paint or rock. They grind it up and make it into a paint. It was called hematite, and they would draw stuff on the walls. We don't know what they mean, what most of it means. In any case, Corey was trying to use some of this red paint on my toes, and so I called it hematite red. And so that's the background story. And so then I wrote this song, and worked up a little ballad to it. And then I'm not much of a singer. I am a guitar player, but I'm not much of a singer. So Ryan, the one guy there, had an incredible voice, and he'd sing songs in the evening. So we performed it on the very last night.
So here's
and then there was a chorus. Yeah, Ballad of Hematite Red. And then there was a chorus in the middle that we would all sing every so often. So that's the background of the story.
Thank you, Zane. So I'm going to play it. This is a couple of minutes, and it's just it's the last evening, but
Sieht doch toll aus.
there is.
Für 38.000.
Okay. There we go. I had to mute him. Okay, so. Don't judge me is what I said. Miles of pain, be a saint. Choose your color, be a lane. Red miles from fear and devil sneer. Be my toe, my eyes move. But even tired red, don't be my toe, that dirty red. Even tired red, don't judge me is what I said. Dirty Corey is the deed. Stayed alive at 2:05. Friday to love her, I cried, but stayed alive at 2:05. Chorus. Well, even tired red, don't jump the toes that dirty red. Even tired red, don't jump me is what I said. All right, chorus again. Tired red, even my toes that dirty red. Even tired red, God save me. God save me, something about that goddamn dirty red. You had to be there, but you did a great job, Zane. You did a great job. So here's a couple of.
Thank you. I give most of the credit to Ryan, because he couldn't read the words. The sun was going down, and as the paper was running out, the words my handwriting is really bad. It was really crowded at the bottom, and the sun was going down, and he's trying to read the words for the very first time and sing them. So it was. I give a lot of credit to him.
Here are a couple of videos. The first video is going to be on. It's one Lava Falls, and this is a crew of a private trip, and they're running with a catamaran first, and then they had 3 14-foot rafts with a couple in each one of them. And it just gives you an idea of how rough Lava Falls is and why it's listed as a class 10. And I have to apologize for the videoing of this one, trying to get back up to start the next boat's trip, but it will be coming along here. I'm a little lost to find it through the viewfinder, and here we go. This is the second raft.
And you can see that the big thing that they're all trying to miss is the big hole of the rocks on the right-hand side there. It's called the cheese grater rock, I believe.
The most important thing here is to realize that this is a 38-foot drop from where you start to where you end. So, you know, it's hard to put perspective to it unless you're in the boat, and then you're hanging on for dear life. So the last thing you want to do is take pictures. So there's a few more. Jim, can you give input if you want? But this is another very good, interesting one.
This is just going down. The guide let me row the day before I had rowed, and then this day, and probably rowed about an hour or so, and it's great. And then went through he then allowed me to take it through a rapid, and then this easier one, and then the next one is a little, I think it's a class 4.
Right. The key here is Jim is a neophyte, right? And so they let him row through a couple.
Absolutely.
Right. But he did a magnificent job. I'm going to turn the sound off.
The guide is in the right front, and he's directing me where to go and how to get the boat lined up to approach the rapids. Yeah. And the trick to this is to put the bow of the boat into the breaking wave that you don't want to get sideways on. So he was constantly saying, square it up, square it up. But you'll see that I'm doing such a poor job. The second boat passes us. There they come. That's how it's supposed to be done. Okay, Barry, we can go to the next one.
Nasty. So one time I was on a private trip down here. My buddy was in a little duggy, one of those inflatable kayaks. We're coming up to this rapid, and I'm telling him how to do the rapid. Just like there's a giant pole dead center in the river. We're gonna go left of it. There's a little bit of room right if you like end up over there for some reason. Go far right, but whatever you do, don't be in the center of the river. And so I make my move right there and turn around to watch him, and he's just like on the cusp of dropping into that hole. And he just has this look of horror on his face. But he's like not paddling at all, just sitting there like, and just gets eaten, just chundered in there and eventually washes out. Has to swim to find his boat. Oh, it was hilarious. Oh, just like, madam.
I'm obviously filming this one from the back of the raft, and that's the pro.
Say again, Jim? You said something, I apologize.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just talking about Eric being the pro. This guy's the amateur again. We can go beyond this one.
You did well, Jim. Now, there is a feature that they allowed us to do on some of the rapids, and it's called riding the bull. And so one of us could sit at the front of the boat as you're going through the rapid and you're hanging on. So you had the potential of falling in. None of us did, but here's Kevin going through a couple of the rapids, what's called riding the bull on the front of the boat.
And the good news that Donna pointed out is all three of the ladies that were on the boat with her on the trip with us, all three of them rode the bull successfully.
Okay. Going.
Okay, just a quick perspective, right about, I think at day 15, I mentioned that there were 3 guys who tried to hike out. Well, this was the rapid that they didn't want to go down, where they hiked out and they ended up killing themselves. Well, this was the rapid they told us, if you want to get out and swim this rapid, you can. So here you're going to watch us swim this rapid.
Lower again. Go now, again.
We learned pretty quickly that the swimmers went down the rapids more quickly than the raft did. So they got pretty far ahead of us, and we then wound up catching them and then bringing them up aboard. We'll probably cut that part out of it. I heard Donna's little snick there, and that was probably, or snicker, and it's probably because it's like a beached whale trying to get out of the water and getting these guys back up into the boat.
I didn't swim this one, but I swam the first one. Yeah, it's dead fish. So.
Patty's still on?
I don't think so. No, I don't see her.
Okay, Barry, show us how it's done.
Oh, well, it's not a pleasant experience. Now we got the other two coming aboard.
And they kept their trunks on.
Thank goodness.
And here comes the best one.
This is Kevin, our Marine. Okay, the three of you guys right here. Come on, you beach boy, look up here. All right, it's all being videoed. Look, everything you say. Congratulations. Congratulations, guys. There you go. We are the champions. We are the
Anyway, this is one last video. This is the action of the jet boat as we're leaving, and they're taking us to Pierce Ferry.
You can see the boat just making these radical turns. He's dodging the sandbars that he can see and his perch up a little bit higher than what we are at water level. Plus, he's done this for a number of years, but he says that it changes every season. And this was it wasn't the first time he'd been up, but we were the first trip of the season for oars. So this is a brand new deal with the jet boat. And we had just left our campground, and you don't see much of the silt, but as we get down in the next video, you're going to see the silt banks that Barry was talking about. And it's pretty hard to believe that the last time the Lake Mead was full was in the late 80s. And where we are on the next video, we're downstream enough to where you're able to see those 60-foot silt banks and realize that there's been another canyon carved out of that silt that I've sort of referred to as the Silt Canyon, because that was all solid silt. And where we were on the next video, we would have been 60 feet underneath silt. And all that silt has continued on down the river since the late 80s.
Guys, that is it. That we are at the we're back in America again.
I have a question. How many times a year and how many people are allowed to do this trip?
I believe that the number that we've heard, and you'll hear this number, I'll give you a little bit of what I gathered from last my next week's presentation. But the river has about 20,000 visitors a year go down the Colorado River.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The real key, Sabine, is not how many people, it's the quality of the trip, right? So if you want to sit on the back of a motorized boat and go down the Colorado River in 5 days, you can do that, right? But it depends on how much, how experiential, how much time and enjoyment you want to have on it. I mean, I don't think could I have spent another week there? No, it's a couple of days, but you don't want to just go through the Colorado or through the Grand Canyon in 5 or 6 day trips. It depends on what you want, but if you want to experience all of this stuff and more, you really got to just take your time.
Mhm. But still, I mean, there's just so much or so many. Did you meet any others? I mean, another crew or trip, or were you all by yourself?
No, we did run into a few other trips about the fourth day. I think it was fourth or fifth day. There was a company that had a motorized trip where 15 people sit on a raft and they have an engine out back and they're, you know, you're running down the Colorado that way. And they passed us up, and, you know, then 5 days later, we saw another one that came by us. And, you know, yes, it all comes down to, our boats were 4 people and a guide. And it's much more intimate, I guess is the word. When you do that, you get a better feel and you ask questions, because when you got a motor running, it's hard to ask any questions.
And you don't feel the river. I mean, it's just like anything else. But the people sleep same as you do. I mean, they all sleep in tents. It's not like there's luxury down there.
I'm sorry, Eric's wife, Elsbeth, we had this conversation last week, would not be one that would like this trip, because there's no white linen cloths. There's no beautiful linen to pull above herself going to bed. There's no showers in the morning. This is, there's no shopping. There's no Gucci. So, you know, it's when we were kids camping, it's camping, but it's first, but it's, I mean, it's first class camping.
Oh yes, because you had the best food. I mean, you had everything. I mean, the grit, or I had to find out what this means in German. Grit means what you put out if there's salt on the street. Is that grit?
Oh, grit, G-R-I-T.
Yeah.
Donna,
Is
grit.
that
It's
so is grit what in Germany? Grit, or the translation I found is when you have snow or something on the streets and you put grit on it so you don't.
What? No,
it's coarse sand.
It's very the sand in the Grand Canyon is very, very fine. I mean, it literally, we keep saying it, but it got into everything. I mean, it got into
it's like the consistency of baby powder.
It's awful, but you can't do anything about it. And like I said, at about, I think probably day 11, 12, I just accepted it. I stopped sweeping, I stopped brushing, I stopped shaking things out. It's here. Okay, you win.
Okay, so it's not like my translation, something very coarse. It's very, very, very fine.
Very, very fine. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like nothing I've experienced before in beach camping and things like that. So.
Okay.
No.
Anyway, it requires a little bit of flexibility when you go down here. And if you ever, Sabina, it's interesting. I asked the guides, how many Europeans do this trip? They said none. How many Chinese do this trip? None. I go, well, why? Well, here's why. It requires you to think ahead 2 years to make a reservation. And then you need to have the time, because most people want to go from Las Vegas to Disneyland to San Francisco to Las Vegas. I mean, you know, it's all of these. So instead of spending the whole vacation making this the vacation, so it's you know, it requires, it's a different mindset to do this trip.
Did you ever do a rafting tour before that?
In the 1970s, when dinosaurs were roaming, I used to put I used to put river trips together. I did it on the Rogue River and on the American River and the Stanislaus, but those were 2-day trips, 1-day trip, 5-day trips, but nothing like this. But I mean, I always wanted to do this because I knew the Colorado is kind of the, I don't know what the words are, but I mean,
granddaddy of them all.
Thank you, Jim. That's a granddaddy.
Mhm.
And so I always wanted to do it, and I never had the opportunity. And this year, when Christmas time, when, because I can't think 2 years ahead, but when Jim called at Christmas time and there were some spots, I jumped on it right away. And it was all because of
Yeah.
COVID. So one good thing of COVID, this trip.
Yeah, actually, I never heard about this, or I didn't pay attention to it, because river rafting like that, that's very, not, I wouldn't say common, but many people do it. Like we have that many, but it's not the Grand Canyon. It's just a river that goes through I don't know how you call it, a canyon, but a European canyon. Like you have what I did a couple of years ago in France, the Grand Canyon de Verdun. I don't know if you know that, or Ardèche, or here in Austria, you have a couple of these things, but it's not the same. So I never thought about it. And it really, to me, it's something I'm interested in, because it's something special, and I like it quiet and just have the scenery go by, and not too sophisticated. I would like to do that, but 2 years in advance, okay, yeah, well, we have to plan it. But we Europeans, we like to plan many years in advance, so for us it's not a problem. Expensive it is. You said, what is $7,000?
Yep, about give or take 1,000 here and there, and more on the upper side than the lower side, but 7,000 is a good starting figure.
Yeah.
With no masseuse or spa.
But it's a long trip too. It's a lot more than 5 or 6 days. It's 3 times as long as the shorter raft trips. So
and
it's
it's special. It's something you do once in your life, and all the history of the earth. You just see what earth was built. With all these layers and everything, we have to Google what is this or what is that, and it's just incredible. I think it's really, I feel like it was, you all say it was worth the trip.
Oh,
absolutely.
And then you spend so much money on whatever, so this is something special.
It is, and I have looked at it, that if you really want to go on a river rafting trip, you're not going to find rapids that are bigger, but you're going to find a number of rivers that have rapids that are closer together. We did 277 miles, and they claim that only 5% of that 277 miles is going through rapids. So it is a very serene trip. You're doing it for the side canyon hikes. You're doing it for the geology. And we were very, very fortunate in our trip. And I've said this numerous times. Luck plays a very important part in a trip like this. And we had 16 people that blended together very well. We didn't have anybody that really threw the trip off, or the guides, and it was simple and easy for us. To go back to your first question, it is a first-class trip. We didn't do any work. All of our meals were prepared for us. The guides did the whole thing, but it was a fabulous trip for camaraderie of the other people that we met, and we lucked out with that. Our weather, we didn't have any rain, and that's all luck. So lots of things to consider on the trip.
You don't want to do, Sabine, if you ever decide to sign up, you don't want to do it in June, July, or August. It just, your brain will explode.
Yeah.
Last week in Phantom Ranch, it was 119 degrees at Phantom Ranch.
She has no idea what 119 is, Jim, but
No,
Okay,
very hot.
we'll subtract 30 and divide it by half. So
It's more than 40 degrees Celsius.
45, yes. And I spent 9 hours in our vaccination hall last night, and it was, well, in Celsius, it was 35 there. And
that's
I
70,
was,
so it's 100 degrees.
and I was sweating, and the people were falling off the chairs like, boom, boom, boom. And I had, well, good for you. Coca-Cola was the thing. I had like, I don't know. I gave them all Coke, Coke, Coke. Get up, get out.
So 119 degrees is 48
45,
degrees. 48.
48.
48. Where was that?
48 centigrade.
But that was at the bottom of the Grand Canyon at a spot that you saw on, I think, presentation 1 was Phantom Ranch, where we got off and went to the only part of civilization we saw at all.
You can't stay there. I mean, you have to stay in the water all the time.
And
So-
that's 48 to 52 degrees,
Yeah,
which
that's-
is,
So
So-
if you plan it, April is the month.
So Phantom Ranch, there is, there are a place to stay there, but you have to book it 2 years in advance. There's like a large dormitory assembly for women and for men, and it has showers.
Campgrounds too.
And there's a campground there as well, yes.
But the showers, you always went to the water, no? Did you would just swam or you didn't
you did
shower
a
at
quick,
all?
we did a quick dip, get wet, slather up and dip out.